So good afternoon and welcome to another version of our Herkimer Central School District Instructional Technology Support, our training series. This month we're doing a deep dive on the Smartboards. Today we're going to start out with basic operation of the Smartboard and some of the commands and tools that are in there. And for the next month or the rest of the month, the next few weeks, we're going to get into the Smart Notebook applications, layouts, and the Smart Apps suite as well. So today we're going to start out basically with the Smartboard. We all know interactive display. It looks like a really neat whiteboard for a lot of people, but we're hopefully going to push you to the next level after that. Starting out, I'm going to show you how to orient the board. So this isn't really a big problem these days, as these are usually get hooked up and are writing out right away and are pretty good. But if for some reason it seems to be off, you can always do an orientation. I'm going to click the little up arrow down here. And I really don't know other way to describe it, but what looks like a turntable is the Smart options. And this is going to bring up our notebook, our recorder, keyboard. We'll hit some of this stuff on here, but you notice there is an orient button. If I hit that, it's going to bring up a screen that's going to allow us to orient the Smartboard and make sure that everything is lining up correctly. And this is designed that it clicks whenever you lift your finger up. So it actually doesn't matter where you press down. It's when you lift your finger that matters. And you get it. So I can press here as long as I lift over top of that little arrows. That's the important part, is the lift, not the press. So if you found you pressed in the wrong spot, don't worry about it. It's not until you lift your finger does the orientation take place. So that's a real quick way to orient your board if you find that it's not giving you a precise touch. Most of the times with these ones that are now hardwired in, it's not as a big issue. Used to be a much bigger issue when we had the projectors connected to that. Also, I noticed when I click that little arrow thing, we've got a recorder. It is a full screen record. It's an option for some of you that might want to record some lessons if you're doing a one-on-one lesson, if you're doing a presentation lesson for, say, a flipped classroom, or if you're just doing something that you want to record, you always have that option to record. So if I click on that, the record option, you'll notice that down here in the little corner, a little camcorder pops up, and you can record, pause, stop. You can hide it. There's a bunch of configure options. There's stuff to go through there. Some of the configure options are just talking about video formats and all that stuff. Typically, what it does is a Windows media file, or there's also a Smart Recorder file, which is a WAIV. I believe both of these are supported by YouTube, so that really all that stuff doesn't really matter about that. You can play where you want the save file and all that jazz. You'll notice there's a nice little control panel for you to use that makes it easy to just pop up. You can record desktop. That's going to be by default. You can also choose an area if you know you're going to be working in a certain area, or it's a nice way to record, like maybe a video of something else, but you don't want all the other stuff that's going to go on. Or you can record a window if you're going to be working in one specific window or tab. You can use that as well. Some other options we have here is the screen shade option. Screen shade option is really nice if you want to try and hide part of your, screen. So let's say I'm working on a problem and I want to have an answer and I want to hide that answer. I can always use the Windows screen option, and I can pull down and reveal. We can pull over and reveal. You can basically tailor this window shade to whatever section of the board that you want to keep hidden. So that's a nice option there. You know, if I was playing GoldenEye back in the day and I wanted to hide, not be able to see what the other person was doing, so they couldn't cheat, that would have been a great thing to have. So that's that is the screen shade option, which is that. You have the screen capture tool. Much like other screen capture tools, this is a nice tool that if you want to use and be able to take pictures of certain things, you can either have the entire, starting from left to right, we have a section capture. We can capture just a section of our screen, and then basically whatever I draw, it's going to capture. We can have the full screen, a window, or we can draw. The draw is real nice because if you're doing something that is a different shape than maybe a different shape than what the screen or the window is, you can actually draw what it is. And once you have taken that capture, you can send it right straight to a Smart Notebooks. When we start talking about Smart Notebook and we're building lessons and have photos and stuff, the capture tool is a really great tool to be able to take images, or when I used to use a lot of old Regents exams, I get the PDF up and I would take pictures of those questions so I can enter those into my lesson basically as they were. Spotlight is really nice if you're teaching something and you want to highlight an area for the students. Oops, hold on. So kind of the reverse of the screen share. This is so I can actually just show a certain part of the board and it put it on the other one. Put it on my other screen because I chose the wrong one. So as you can see, when I click on it, it gives me just a small window for you to use. You can drag it around and choose what and how much you want to share of a certain screen, blocks out everything else. So it's kind of the opposite of the shade program. I tend to find that's clunky and a little bit more cumbersome to use than the shade option, but that's also because I haven't used a lot of it. When I first started using Smartboard, the screen shade was the more popular thing to use, or the only thing that was available. It didn't have the spotlight yet. That's pretty much now for a net. With the writing pens, when we get into our pens down here, obviously we all know that Smart Ink allows us to write stuff. Okay, but once I write something, I have the option, this little arrow with the A, to actually turn it into another word. So if I write out a word like data, and then select this, it'll turn it into that word, and then I can choose where to send that word to. And I can insert my words into different documents. So let's say I'm working on Cami and I want to write it out, but sometimes my handwriting isn't always the greatest, or I want to make sure that it's in a digital format for whatever reason. Once you write your word, you will be able to click on it, hit the text, and it'll be able to tell you, you can tell, where you want that word to be put into. Obviously, we also know that if we write, that if we use the back of the pen, we can erase things. If we want to erase a small section, we can use that. But if we're writing a bunch of stuff, and I want to erase a lot of stuff at once, I can use the back of my hand. I can draw a big circle and then hit the center, and it deletes it out. It's also touch sensitive, where if I put more of a touch, it's going to be a larger circle. If I put a small touch, it's going to be a smaller circle. There's obviously, it knows that when you're changing colors, that now we have our red color. We can also change those settings. We can change those settings in the Smart Ink board. You notice I can put it in larger stuff like that. And down here in your Smart Inks, you can, once I click on the little pen, we've got our choice between a highlighter or a pen. We can choose our pen size, our pen color. We have customizable colors here. We have our line size. We can also put dashed lines. We can put arrows on them or cubics. So let's say I'm doing a number line or something, that's just how thick the line can be. So now if I change to blue, notice it puts those endpoints on there. So we can change all that stuff as far as what type of line we want to create. what else? What other options we have? That option comes up as soon as I pick up the pen. We should be able to access those options. You can also see that if you click on these 3 dots over here, there's highlighter or calligraphy pen. There's crayons, paintbrushes, creative pen, magic pen, shape pen, text pen. Magic pen is fun. If you get into Notebook, when you have a magic pen, you can start to add pictures and emojis. It makes it really easy to add a stamp to people's works because it's going to be a simple picture. We'll show that when we get into Smart Notebook. Some of the other options that we have down here, we've got our little toolbox here, which brings up some of those things that I talked about earlier. If we wanted to have a little stamp pen, we have the option to do that in our toolbox. Hey, somebody's got a really great idea. Panda for whatever reason. Every time I touch the board, it's going to make a panda. Hey, stars! You know, the more you know. Crayons, markers, so on and so forth. You can also add some images. If you click on that plus, you can actually take one of your own images and add it in. So if you had like your Bitmoji, you could actually take your Bitmoji and add it to this. And so that way, every time you stamp with your marker, it'll make one of your Bitmojis appear on the board. Let's see, there's the tool that's the below writing to text. If you want to write right into text, instead of doing that, so now we got that, it pops it right in and tells us that our text is there. Again, that's under the toolbox. I write my word, it figures it out, and it'll turn it right into my word based on whatever I said. Underneath a star is basically any of your favorites. If you have a favorite setting you like to use, you can preload that setting, whether it be the pen, the stamp, or the tool, so you're not fumbling around. If there's something you always use, you can do that. One thing that I like to set up is if I have a Bitmoji and stamps that I use regularly when I'm looking at stuff, I would set it up in my favorites, so I'm not trying to fumble around and find it anywhere. Let's see, screen share, capture. So we went over the spotlight. Spotlight is nice because I can then move my spotlight around my pen very easily. This is a much easier way of using the spotlight to highlight that using the pen tool. That's my screen share shade. Take a picture. Take a picture is nice. So again, you get your options and so on and so forth. So that makes it really easy. That little pen tray trick makes it really, really easy to figure all that stuff out. Again, circle, right in the middle, erase all. Let's see, some other things that we should know from our smart board. If you ever want to know if there's your updates, if your smart board doesn't seem to be running correctly, don't be afraid to look for an update. The important updates to look for are the smart product drivers, smart update. Smart notebook is what we're getting into next week. You do have to sign in to use that smart update, that smart notebook update, but you're going to use your Herkimer email and password to access the smart notebook. That automatically activates your license and allows you to use smart notebook. I believe we have 100 smart notebook licenses. So if you've never used smart notebook before, I suggest signing in and playing around with it before next week because there's some really cool stuff that we have to do. Smart Ink, Gallery Essentials, Lesson Toolkit, and Smartboard, they usually update automatically with Smart Product or Smart Drivers or Smart Notebook. So these ones you don't really need to worry about. The big ones would be the top 3 up here. And if you ever see them and they say update, they're supposed to update automatically, but if not, hit the update on them. Let them do their updates. Depending on how big the update is, it may take 5 minutes. It could take a half hour. Just be patient with that. We do try to keep up to date with them, but every now and then, they don't do it. They don't like to do that, and sometimes we'll just do a check now just to make sure that they're up. And that is the show the Smart Touch inking tool. That's going to be that thing that's going to, if some of you have had issues with the Smart Ink or the Smart Pen actually writing, that's a good thing to pop up. That'll bring up this little menu for you to allowing the touch to write. Right now it's on an arrow, so what it does is it's going to make a box. But if I switch over to the pen, now I can actually write with my finger. That's telling the machine that I want to use my finger to write. If I go to the toolbox, same thing. It's just like if I wanted to go through and mark some stuff out, it'll do that. So that smart inking tool is really fun to use if you are going to be using some shortcuts and you want to just use the touch. Make sure the touch is working, so you're going to want to do that. Again, you can load up favorites, so if there's a bunch of things that you're going to be using over and over again, you can do that there. And again, I find that by going to the little arrow, show smart touching ink tool is what I did. I'm going to hide it, it'll disappear back again, and now my fingers just default a mouse again, just by touching the mouse. Let's see here. On the old ones, we used to have the double tap, but we don't have that anymore. Two finger. Oh, there we go. A right click on these new ones is hold with one finger, hold down, and then tap again. Oops, and it should bring up your right click. You see how it makes a box. If I click with my second finger outside that box, it's basically like a right click. So if you're ever looking for, I'm looking for my right click option on the board. Press and hold, it makes a box, and then if you press outside that box, it'll bring up that right click menu. So that's a way to do a right click when you're up at the board doing something with the Smartboard and you're looking for an option. So if I had the problem with my display or something, or I needed to do a right click on some sort of activity, I press and hold, little box is formed, press outside that box with another digit, and it will create that right click for you. There used to be, and let me see if I'm seeing it. Nope, that's all my right click options. Let's see. Oh, keyboard. So obviously you know that there's the on-screen keyboard as well. You used to be able to press two buttons down at the bottom to bring that up. Let me see if it's still an option. I don't think it is. But you always have the option if you're doing something at the board, there's your on-screen keyboard as well. So if you need to type something in, go to a website other than that, like that. You should all know so that when I hit the HDMI, we also have the option to go to our OPS HDMI. If I do that, you're not going to be able to see what I do on the screen because obviously this Google Meet is only recording this screen. It's not going to record the other screen. But we'll be getting into that in further episodes when we're going to talk about using the smart screen that's on the OPS. You're not going to be able to see it right now, but if I do go to it, you're going to stay on my screen right here, but hopefully this will allow me to switch over and see. If I can. So on the OPS, you always know that you do have your interactive whiteboard. All the options for your interactive whiteboard still exist. You can change your paper and stuff like that, do the dots game, brick wall, okay. But you still have your other options that you still had. Over here is my pen with my options for my pen, my screen capture tool, add a photo. If I write a word, I can still take that word and turn it into words. I can also lock and delete things, but like I said, we'll be getting into that a little bit more in detail when we change over. Just want to take a little quick time, and then I'm almost out of, to show you just basic Smartboard functions, maybe some things you didn't know or the errors, some things you already knew or had forgotten about. But that's the basic operation of Smartboard. We'll be getting into the OPS stuff, and some later on we'll be getting into the Smart Notebook next week. And hopefully you've remembered something you'd forgotten about or learned something that you didn't know today. I'm going to stop the recording, so if anybody has any questions, you can ask as soon as it's stopped.